Imagine pulling off one of the biggest robberies ever, right in the middle of London, and almost getting away with it. Sounds like something out of a movie, right? Well, today we're talking about Valerio Viccei, an Italian guy who wasn't just any criminal. He had a love for luxury and a flair for adventure that set him apart. Valerio was all about the high life. Fast cars, expensive suits, and living on the edge. He wasn't content with small-time crimes. No, he had his eyes on something much bigger. And where better to make a splash than Knightsbridge, one of London's swankiest neighborhoods in the glitzy 1980s. In this video, we're going to dive into how Valerio, with his charm and boldness, managed to orchestrate an audacious heist right under everyone's noses. So grab a seat, because this is a story you won't want to miss. So, let's get into Valerio's backstory. He was born in Italy to a pretty well-off family. You might think someone from a respectable background would stay on the straight and narrow, but that wasn't the case with Valerio. From a young age, he was drawn to the excitement and the allure of easy money that came with a life of crime. Before long, he became notorious in Italy. We're talking about over 50 armed robberies. Yeah, you heard that right, 50. The Italian police were hot on his trail, and things were getting too risky for him to stick around. So what did he do? He packed his bags and headed to London, hoping to start fresh, or at least to continue his escapades somewhere new. When Valerio arrived in London, he didn't waste any time blending in with the high rollers. He embraced the flashy lifestyle, expensive cars, designer clothes, the works. To the outside world, he looked like just another wealthy entrepreneur enjoying the good life. Little did they know, his fortune wasn't exactly earned through hard work and legitimate business. Let's dive into how Valerio Viccei planned and pulled off the heist of the century at the Knightsbridge Safe Deposit Centre. Valerio had already made a name for himself with his string of robberies in Italy, but he wasn't satisfied. He wanted something bigger, something that would really cement his legacy. That's when he set his sights on the Knightsbridge Safe Deposit Centre. This place was known for its top-notch security and housed the valuables of some of the wealthiest people in London, including a few high-profile clients. To Valerio, robbing Knightsbridge wasn't just another job. It was the ultimate challenge. But you can't pull off a heist like this alone. Valerio knew he needed a solid team, so he started recruiting. He reached out to a few trusted associates he had met during his time in prison and in the criminal underworld of London. These were people he could rely on, individuals who had the skills and the discretion needed for such a high-stakes operation. Among them were insiders who had worked at security firms and experts in disabling advanced security systems. Valerio made sure everyone on the team was on the same page and fully committed to the plan. With his team in place, the next step was infiltration and preparation. Valerio knew that to get inside the Knightsbridge Centre without raising any suspicion, he needed to blend in perfectly. So he rented a safety deposit box at the center. This wasn't just for show, it was a strategic move. By having his own box, Valerio could get familiar with the layout, the security measures, and the daily routines of the staff. He spent weeks meticulously studying the security protocols, noting the times when the surveillance was less intense and when the guards made their rounds. Every detail mattered. As the day of the robbery approached, Valerio and his team were ready. On the morning of the heist, Valerio arrived at the Knightsbridge Centre disguised as a wealthy client. He was dressed in a sharp suit, exuding the confidence and charm that had become his trademark. He walked in, acted like he belonged, and requested to view his safety deposit box. This was his way of leading his accomplices inside without raising any alarms. Once inside, Valerio smoothly guided his team to the basement where the safety deposit boxes were kept. The basement was heavily guarded and protected by the latest security systems, including automated locks and bulletproof glass walls. But Valerio had a plan. His insider from the security firm had provided them with the necessary tools to bypass these systems quietly. They moved swiftly, taking control of the security staff without causing any immediate panic. Valerio and his team disabled the cameras and the alarm systems, ensuring that the heist could proceed without any interruptions. With the security systems down, they began the meticulous process of looting the safety deposit boxes. There were thousands of them, each containing valuable items like money, jewelry, and important documents. The team worked efficiently, breaking open the boxes and collecting whatever they could carry. It was a race against time because they had to get everything done before the security systems could be restored. The atmosphere was tense but controlled. Valerio stayed in constant communication with his team, making sure everyone knew their role and stayed on track. They had rehearsed this moment countless times, and now it was all coming together. As they moved through the basement, the team encountered a few unexpected hurdles, but Valerio's quick thinking and leadership kept everything under control. By the time they finished looting, they had gathered millions of dollars worth of valuables. But Valerio wasn't done yet. He made sure that there was minimal evidence left behind. They left behind only a small bloody fingerprint, which was all Valerio left by accident. This tiny detail would later play a crucial role in his downfall. With the loot secured, the team made their escape. They had planned every second of their exit strategy, ensuring that they could leave the scene quickly and without being detected. Valerio had arranged for a getaway vehicle to be waiting outside, ready to whisk them away to safety. As they sped away from the Knightsbridge Centre, the adrenaline was pumping, but they remained calm and focused, knowing that their escape needed to be flawless. Back at their hideout, Valerio and his team began counting and sorting through the stolen goods. The amount they had taken was staggering, and it was clear that this heist would be talked about for years to come. They knew they had pulled off something big, something that would make Valerio's name infamous in the criminal world. But even as they celebrated their success, the reality of what they had done began to sink in. Robbing the Knightsbridge Safe Deposit Centre wasn't just about the money. It was about proving that Valerio was the best. He had taken on the best security London had to offer and come out on top. It was a testament to his planning, his team, and his sheer audacity. However, no heist is without its risks. As they were celebrating, a silent alarm had been triggered without their knowledge. It was too late to stop the clock. The police were already on their way, alerted by the minute they had started breaking into the boxes. Valerio knew they had to move fast to stay ahead of the authorities. The team quickly packed up their remaining loot and made a final dash for the getaway car. Valerio himself was on edge, constantly checking for any signs of the police. They sped through the streets of London, taking back alleys and side roads to shake off any potential tail. It was a high-speed chase through the city, but Valerio's experience and knowledge of London's layout helped them stay one step ahead. As they drove away, Valerio couldn't help but feel a mix of triumph and anxiety. They had done it. They had successfully robbed one of the most secure facilities in London. But now, the real challenge was just beginning. The police would be searching for them relentlessly, and Valerio knew that staying hidden would be tougher than ever. Once they were safely away from the immediate area, the team split up to avoid being caught altogether. Valerio headed to a pre-arranged safe house where they could lay low and plan their next moves. They needed to find a way to clean the money and disappear without a trace. It was a daunting task, but Valerio was determined to make it work. Back at the Knightsbridge Centre, the staff and authorities were left reeling from the robbery. The scale of the heist was unlike anything they had seen before, and the precision with which it was executed left them baffled. How had a group of thieves managed to bypass the top-tier security without setting off any alarms? Investigators were called in from all over, trying to piece together what had happened. They reviewed the security footage, interviewed the staff, and looked for any clues that could lead them to the culprits. But Valerio had been smart. By the time they started their investigation, he and his team were already miles away, leaving little evidence behind except for that small, bloody fingerprint. The police were determined to catch the masterminds behind the heist, but it wasn't going to be easy. They knew they were dealing with seasoned criminals who had planned every detail meticulously. The investigation was thorough, but Valerio had covered his tracks well. As days turned into weeks, the story of the Knightsbridge robbery made headlines across the country. People were shocked that such a daring heist had taken place in one of London's most secure locations. The police were under immense pressure to solve the case, but Valerio was always one step ahead, staying hidden and making sure he wasn't on anyone's radar. Meanwhile, Valerio and his team enjoyed their newfound wealth, but the constant fear of being caught lingered over them. They knew that the police were on high alert, and any mistake could lead to their capture. Valerio kept a low profile, moving through different parts of the city and making sure not to attract any attention. The Knightsbridge heist was more than just a robbery, it was a statement. Valerio had proven that he was a mastermind capable of taking on the best and coming out on top. But with great power came great risk, and Valerio was about to find out just how high that risk could go. As the investigation continued, the police started to piece together the puzzle. They looked into Valerio's background, his connections, and his past crimes. It was clear that he was a seasoned criminal with a knack for planning and executing high-stakes operations. But finding him was another story altogether. Valerio knew he couldn't stay in London forever. The more time that passed, the higher the chances of him being caught. So he started planning his next move. Another escape route, another hideout, and another heist to keep his name alive in the criminal world. But the game of cat and mouse between him and the authorities was just beginning. And that's how Valerio Viccei, the charming Italian playboy, pulled off one of the most audacious heists in history. His meticulous planning, his trusted team, and his boldness made the Knightsbridge robbery a legend. But with every big score comes the shadow of the law, and Valerio was about to face the consequences of his actions. Stay tuned, because in the next part, we'll see how the police closed in on Valerio and the thrilling climax of this incredible story. All right, let's jump into the heart of the story, the climax of Valerio Viccei's daring heist at the Knightsbridge Safe Deposit Centre. Everything was going smoothly. Valerio and his team were inside the vault, loading up the loot, when suddenly something unexpected happened. Without anyone noticing, a silent alarm was triggered. It wasn't loud or obvious, but it sent a signal straight to the police. Valerio had been so focused on the heist that he didn't realize the alarm had been set off. This small glitch turned everything upside down in an instant. As soon as the silent alarm went off, Valerio felt the tension rise. He knew that once the police got the alert, time was running out. The whole operation could come crashing down any second. His heart was pounding, and he could see the stress on his team's faces. They had planned for almost everything. "All right, everyone, we need to move," Valerio whispered, his voice steady despite the chaos. The team sprang into action, following the escape plan they had rehearsed so many times. They had a getaway car waiting just outside the building, parked in a side street to avoid any immediate attention. Valerio led the way, making sure no one got left behind. They moved quickly but carefully, trying to leave as little evidence as possible. Every step was calculated to make sure they didn't leave any traces that could lead back to them. Valerio had thought of everything: fake IDs, gloves to hide fingerprints, and even a route that would help them blend into the traffic. It was clear that their meticulous planning was paying off, even in this high-pressure moment. As they reached the exit, Valerio glanced back one last time. The vault was now empty, and the security systems were still down. They had done it. They had pulled off the heist. But now, they had to get out before the police arrived. The streets of London were busy, but Valerio and his team knew exactly where to go. They slipped into the shadows, avoiding the main roads and sticking to the back alleys. Meanwhile, back inside the Knightsbridge Centre, the staff began to realize something was terribly wrong. The vault had been emptied, and valuable items were missing. Panic set in as they tried to understand how this could have happened. They immediately contacted the authorities, But the scale and precision of the robbery left everyone baffled. How had a group of thieves managed to bypass such tight security without setting off any major alarms? The police arrived quickly, swarming the area and securing the scene. They were shocked by the efficiency of the heist. The security footage showed Valerio and his team moving through the vault with ease, disabling cameras and alarms. It was like nothing they had ever seen before. The police were left scratching their heads, trying to piece together how the robbers had managed to pull off such a flawless operation. Back with Valerio, the team was racing against the clock. They reached the getaway car and sped away, blending into the traffic to avoid drawing attention. Valerio's mind was racing as he thought about their next moves. They needed to lay low and find a way to clean the money without getting caught. Every second counted, and they couldn't afford any mistakes. As they drove through the city, Valerio kept an eye on the rearview mirror, watching for any signs of police cars. The streets were filled with people, which was their best cover. They made their way to a pre-arranged safe house, a place where they could regroup and figure out their next steps. Once they were safely inside, they began to sort through the stolen goods, counting the money and valuables they had taken. But even with all their careful planning, the silent alarm had left a small clue, a bloody fingerprint. It was a minor detail, something Valerio had accidentally left behind, but it was enough to give the police a lead. Back at the police station, investigators were poring over the evidence, trying to find any connection to the heist. They were determined to catch the masterminds behind this audacious robbery. Valerio knew that the police would be looking for anything they could find. He had to stay one step ahead, constantly changing locations and keeping a low profile. The pressure was mounting, and he could feel the walls closing in. But Valerio was nothing if not resourceful. He had faced tough situations before, and he wasn't about to let this one get the best of him. As days turned into weeks, the story of the Knightsbridge robbery dominated the headlines. People were amazed that such a well-executed heist had taken place in one of London's most secure locations. The police were under immense pressure to solve the case, but Valerio was always staying out of sight, making sure he wasn't on anyone's radar. Inside the Knightsbridge Centre, the staff were still trying to make sense of what had happened. They reviewed security footage, interviewed employees, and looked for any clues that could lead them to the robbers. But Valerio had covered his tracks well. The only thing linking him to the crime was that tiny bloody fingerprint, which the police were struggling to trace back to him. Valerio's team was also dealing with the aftermath. They had successfully pulled off the heist, but the constant fear of being caught was weighing on them. They knew that the police were getting closer, and any mistake could mean the end of their freedom. Valerio kept everyone focused, reminding them that they had done something incredible and that they needed to stay strong. The tension was palpable as the police closed in on their investigation. They knew they were dealing with seasoned criminals who had meticulously planned every detail of the heist. The more the police dug into Valerio's background, the more they realized just how dangerous and clever he was. But finding solid evidence to link him to the robbery was proving to be a challenge. One night, as Valerio was planning his next move, he received a tip that the police were closing in. He knew it was time to make a bold move to secure his freedom. Valerio decided to make a risky move, returning to London to pick up an expensive sports car he had ordered, thinking it would help him disappear to South America. It was a risky plan, but Valerio was confident in his ability to outsmart the authorities. When Valerio arrived in London, he was careful to stay under the radar. He parked the car in a secluded area and made his way back to the Knightsbridge Centre. Little did he know, the police had been watching his every move. They had set up surveillance on potential suspects, and Valerio was now their prime target. As he reached the car, a police officer spotted him and immediately issued a warrant for his arrest. Valerio realized he had been played, but it was too late to escape. The police moved in quickly, surrounding him and taking him into custody. It was the end of the line for Valerio Viccei, the man who had pulled off one of the most audacious heists in history. The Knightsbridge robbery had been executed with such precision and daring that it left a lasting mark on the criminal world. Valerio's ability to plan and lead his team made him a legend, but it was that small, almost insignificant fingerprint that ultimately led to his downfall. The police were finally able to connect the dots and bring him to justice, ending his reign as one of the most notorious thieves in London. And that's how the story of Valerio Viccei reached its peak. From his charming facade to his meticulous planning, Valerio showed just how far someone would go for wealth and thrill. But in the end, even the best laid plans can unravel, and Valerio's boldness became his undoing. Stay tuned, because next up, we'll talk about what happened after the heist and how Valerio's actions impacted everyone involved. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. You won't want to miss the next chapter of this incredible true crime story. All right, let's move on to what happened after the big heist, the resolution and aftermath of Valerio Viccei's daring robbery at the Knightsbridge Safe Deposit Centre. Once the heist was discovered, the police knew they were dealing with some serious criminals. They didn't waste any time. Authorities from all over the country got involved, launching a massive manhunt to find Valerio and his team. This wasn't just a local police job anymore. It was an international effort. They brought in experts, checked every lead, and used all the resources they had to track down the culprits. Valerio, knowing the heat was on, decided to flee the country. He had connections and knew a few places where he could lay low for a while. But despite his careful planning and attempts to stay hidden, Valerio couldn't resist the urge to return to London. Maybe it was the thrill, or maybe he thought he could pull off another big job, but he decided to come back to ship his Ferrari to South America. It was risky, but Valerio felt confident he could outsmart the police once again. Back in London, things were moving fast. The police had been tracking Valerio's movements and were getting closer to catching him. On the day Valerio returned to pick up his Ferrari, the police were ready. They had set up surveillance and were watching every move he made. As Valerio approached the car, a police officer spotted him and immediately issued a warrant for his arrest. There was no time to escape this time. The police moved in quickly, surrounding him and taking him into custody. It was a big moment. Valerio Viccei, the man who had pulled off one of the most audacious heists in history, was finally caught. His arrest made headlines around the world. The trial that followed was sensational. Everyone wanted to hear from the mastermind behind the Knightsbridge robbery. During the trial, Valerio didn't hold back. He confessed to the heist and even admitted to 5 other unsolved robberies in England. The evidence against him was strong, especially with that small bloody fingerprint left at the scene. The court was packed, and the media couldn't get enough of the story. Valerio's charm and boldness had made him a legend, but now it was time for him to face the consequences of his actions. As the trial concluded, Valerio was sentenced to 22 years in prison. It was a long time, but for someone with his criminal history, it wasn't surprising. The other members of his gang also faced their own sentences, depending on their roles in the heist. Latif, the manager of the Knightsbridge Centre who had helped Valerio from the inside, was sentenced to 18 years in prison. The rest of the team received various terms based on their involvement. It was clear that the authorities wanted to make an example out of them to prevent similar crimes in the future. The Knightsbridge heist had a huge impact on how banks and vaults operated. Security measures were overhauled to prevent something like this from happening again. Banks started using more advanced technology, better training for their staff, and stricter protocols for accessing safe deposit boxes. There was also a lot of talk about insider threats, how someone like Latif could have helped Valerio get away with such a big robbery. Banks realized they needed to keep a closer eye on their employees and ensure that no one had too much access or power. This heist raised important questions about security and trust. How could such a well-planned robbery happen in one of the most secure places in London? It made everyone rethink their security systems and protocols. Banks began to invest more in security technology and started conducting more thorough background checks on their employees. The Knightsbridge robbery became a case study in what not to do and how to improve security to protect valuable assets. For Valerio, his time in prison was a period of reflection. He had always been confident in his abilities, but now he had a lot of time to think about his actions and their consequences. The trial and his sentencing were just the beginning of a long journey behind bars. Even though he was locked up, his story continued to captivate people. He became a symbol of the ultimate criminal mastermind, someone who was smart, daring, and ultimately undone by his own mistakes. The aftermath of the Knightsbridge heist also affected the people involved. The staff at the Safe Deposit Centre were traumatized by the robbery. They had trusted their workplace and their colleagues, only to have everything turned upside down in an instant. It took time for them to recover and regain their sense of security. The heist had left a lasting mark on the community, serving as a reminder of how quickly things can change and how important it is to stay vigilant. Valerio's story also had an impact on the criminal world. He showed that with the right planning and a bit of luck, even the most secure places could be breached. Other criminals took notice, but Valerio's downfall served as a warning. It wasn't easy to stay ahead of the law, and the risks were always high. His eventual capture proved that no one is truly untouchable, no matter how clever or bold they are. In the end, the Knightsbridge heist was more than just a robbery. It was a turning point for security measures, a lesson in trust and vigilance, and the story of a man who pushed the boundaries of what was possible until he couldn't push anymore. Valerio Viccei's name became synonymous with one of the most daring heists in history, but it also became a reminder that every action has its consequences. And that wraps up the story of Valerio Viccei and the Knightsbridge Safe Deposit heist. It was a roller coaster of planning, execution, and the inevitable downfall of a master thief. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Have you heard of any other incredible heists? Or maybe you have a theory about how Valerio thought he could outsmart everyone. Drop your ideas down below. I'd love to hear them. Don't forget to check out our other videos where we dive into more true crime stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, let's wrap up the incredible story of Valerio Viccei and the Knightsbridge Safe Deposit heist. Looking back, Valerio's charm and boldness were key to pulling off one of the most daring robberies in history. He wasn't just another criminal. He was a mastermind who knew how to blend charisma with meticulous planning. His ability to connect with people and his fearless approach made him stand out in the world of crime. Valerio took on one of London's most secure places and came out on top, showing just how far someone would go for excitement and wealth. But Valerio's story isn't just about the thrill of the heist. It became a lesson for everyone in the security business. After the Knightsbridge robbery, banks and vaults everywhere started rethinking how they protect their valuables. They realized that even the best security systems could have weaknesses if the right people were involved. Valerio's actions showed that insider threats and human error could be just as dangerous as any high-tech security measure. This led to stricter protocols, better training for staff, and more advanced technology to keep things safe. Valerio Viccei left a lasting legacy in the world of crime and security. His story serves as a warning to institutions to stay vigilant and continuously improve their security measures. It's a reminder that no system is perfect and that staying one step ahead requires constant effort and attention. And now it's your turn to join the conversation. If you found Valerio's story as fascinating as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more true crime tales. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think Valerio could have pulled off another heist, or was his capture inevitable? Drop your comments below and let's discuss. Don't forget to check out our other videos where we explore more daring heists and the masterminds behind them. There's plenty more incredible stories waiting for you, so dive in and keep the conversation going. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.